The deep space scanner beeped 3 times. Captain Lisa Morgan looked up from her morning coffee and walked to the main screen. Something big was coming their way. Very big. "Carmen, what do you see out there?" Lisa called to her medical officer, who was also handling sensor duty. Dr. Carmen Lopez tapped her screen several times. Her face went pale. "Captain, we have 15 ships approaching fast. They're huge. Much bigger than anything in our database." Lisa set down her coffee cup. The UES Horizon was a science ship, not a warship. They had come to the Kepler 442 system to study the 3 planets that might support life. Now it looked like life had found them first. "All hands to stations," Lisa announced over the ship's speakers. "This is not a drill." The bridge filled with her crew. Chief Engineer Betty Kane took her position at the power controls. Communications Specialist Helen Wright sat at her console and began scanning for signals. Navigation Officer Paul Davis checked their escape routes. The alien ships appeared on the main screen. They looked like giant metal spears painted in gold and red. Strange symbols covered their hulls. Lisa had never seen anything like them. "Captain, they're sending a message," Helen said. "It's coming through on all frequencies." "Put it on screen." The face that appeared made several crew members step back. The alien had gray skin pulled tight over sharp bones. Its eyes were completely black. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am Commander Vexhai of the Zilithian Empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately. You will provide all navigation data and cultural records. You will submit to the divine mandate." Lisa stepped forward. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the United Earthship Horizon. We are on a peaceful scientific mission. We mean no harm to your people." Vexhai's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. "Your intentions are meaningless. Your species is primitive. You will obey or face destruction." "We are protected under interstellar law," Lisa said firmly. "Article 12 of the Geneva Convention applies to all sentient beings." The alien commander laughed. It was a horrible sound. "Your Earth laws mean nothing here. This is our space. You are trespassers." Lisa looked at her crew. She could see fear in their eyes, but also determination. They were explorers, not soldiers, but they were human beings with rights and dignity. "I'm sorry, Commander, but we cannot surrender our ship or our data. If you want to talk, we can discuss a peaceful solution." Vexhai's black eyes narrowed. "You refuse the divine mandate?" "Yes, we do." The alien screen went dark. A moment later, Helen's board lit up with warnings. "Captain, they're charging weapons," she said. "Raise shields. Send a distress signal to Earth Command." Betty's fingers flew over her controls. "Shields up, but Captain, they won't hold against that kind of firepower." "Signal sent," Helen reported. "But it will take 6 months to reach Earth." The horizon shook as energy beams hit their shields. Sparks flew from several control panels. The lights flickered. "Shields at 60%, Betty called out. Lisa gripped her chair. "All power to engines, get us out of here." "They're too fast," Paul said from navigation. "We can't outrun them." Another blast hit the ship. This time the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in, casting everything in red light. "Shields failing," Betty reported. The alien voice came over their speakers again. "Surrender now or watch your crew die." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her family back on Earth. Her sister Kate, who was raising 2 children alone. Her mother, who had fought for women's rights her whole life. They would understand her choice. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for boarding. Follow protocols. Give them nothing." The horizon shuddered as the alien ships attached to their hull. Lisa could hear cutting sounds as they burned through the outer doors. "Stay calm," she told her crew. "Remember your training." The bridge doors burst open. Zilithian soldiers poured in wearing black armor. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their leader pointed at Lisa. "You are the commander?" "Yes, I am Captain Lisa Morgan. You will come with us." They marched the crew to the cargo bay at gunpoint. Lisa counted her people as they walked. 23 humans total, 12 men and 11 women. All good people who had volunteered for this mission to help humanity learn about the universe. Into the cargo bay, the aliens separated the men from the women. Lisa felt her heart sink. She had read about this tactic in history books. It never ended well. Commander Vexhai stood before them. He looked even more frightening in person. His armor was covered with spikes and strange metals. "You have refused the divine mandate," he said. "Your males will pay the price for your arrogance." "Wait," Lisa stepped forward. "I'm the captain. I made the decision. Punish me, not them." Vexhai studied her with those black eyes. "Interesting. The female thinks she leads. In our empire, females exist to serve, they do not command. On Earth, men and women are equal. We serve together. Not anymore." Vexhai raised his hand. His soldiers pointed their weapons at the male crew members. "No!" Lisa shouted. She tried to run toward them, but alien hands grabbed her arms. The energy beams fired. 12 good men died in seconds. Paul Davis, who had 3 children. Engineer Mike Torres, who was going to marry his girlfriend when they got home. Dr. Sam Johnson, who had discovered 2 new types of bacteria just last week. Lisa screamed. She fought against the aliens holding her, but they were too strong. Around her, the other women cried and shouted in horror. Vexhai watched their reactions with interest. "Now you understand the price of defiance. You will give us your navigation, data, and cultural files." Lisa looked at the bodies of her crew, her friends, her responsibility. Tears ran down her face, but when she looked up at Vexhai, her eyes burned with something else. "Never," she said quietly. The alien commander stepped closer. "You will break eventually. Females always do. We have time." Lisa met his gaze without flinching. "You don't know human women very well." Vexhai laughed again. "We will see." As the aliens dragged them to prison cells, Lisa made a silent promise to the men who had died. The Zilithian Empire thought they had won by killing the males and terrorizing the females. They thought human women would crumble under grief and fear. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. 6 months passed before Lisa's distress signal reached Earth. The message arrived at the Deep Space Communications Center in Colorado on a Tuesday morning. Technician Jerry Blake was drinking his second cup of coffee when the computer started beeping. The signal was weak and broken, but the words were clear enough. "UES Horizon under attack. Crew murdered. Request immediate assistance." Within an hour, the message reached Dr. Amanda Stevens at the Xenological Institute in Washington. She read it 3 times before picking up her secure phone. "Get me General Harrison at Defense Command," she told her assistant. But Amanda had already made up her mind about something else. She opened her personal computer and began typing names into a secure database. Women she had known for years. Women she trusted. Women who would understand what needed to be done. The first name on her list was Kate Sullivan. Kate had retired from the Marines 2 years ago after 25 years of service. She was teaching hand-to-hand combat at a private academy in Texas when Amanda called. "Kate, we have a problem, a big one." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires women who know how to fight." Kate was quiet for a moment. "I'm listening." Amanda explained about the Horizon and the dead crew members. She told Kate about Captain Lisa Morgan and the other women being held prisoner somewhere in deep space. "The military will want to send ships," Amanda said. "Big guns and lots of noise. That will take years to organize and probably get more people killed." "What are you thinking instead?" Kate asked. "I'm thinking about what women do best. We take care of our own. We solve problems that men think are impossible. We get things done." Kate smiled for the first time in weeks. "How many women are we talking about?" "As many as it takes." By the end of the week, Kate was on a plane to Washington. She brought a list of her own. Former soldiers, pilots, engineers, and scientists. Women who had served their country and knew how to keep secrets. They met in Amanda's office on a Friday night, 12 women sitting around a conference table, each one bringing different skills to the group. Elena Vasquez owned the largest shipping company on the West Coast. Her cargo ships traveled to space stations throughout the solar system. "I can move people and equipment without anyone asking questions," she said. Maya Patel had designed communication systems for 3 different intelligence agencies. "I can build networks that no government can trace or break." Dr. Ruth Goldman was a Historian who specialized in alien cultures. I've been studying every piece of information we have about hostile species. There are patterns we can use. Patricia Bell had worked undercover operations on 4 different planets. I have contacts throughout the galaxy, people who hate the Empire as much as we do. The meeting lasted until sunrise. By the time they finished, they had the outline of a plan that would have terrified any general in the regular military. They called it the Underground Railroad, like the network that had helped slaves escape in the old days. But this railroad would move through space instead of across country. Maya set up the first communication relay within a week. She used commercial satellites and mining station equipment to create a network that looked like normal business traffic. Messages traveled from Earth to Mars to the asteroid belt and beyond. Elena's ships began carrying special cargo, food and medical supplies that were actually weapons and equipment. Passengers who were listed as technicians and scientists but were actually trained fighters. Kate opened recruitment centers in 20 different cities. She was careful about who she approached. Only women who had military experience or special skills. Only women who could keep secrets and follow orders. The response surprised even Kate. Within a month, she had 5,000 volunteers, engineers who wanted to design better weapons, doctors who wanted to help wounded prisoners, pilots who wanted to fly rescue missions. Dr. Ruth Goldman made a discovery that changed everything. She was studying captured Empire broadcasts when she noticed something important. The Zilithian Empire was completely male-dominated. Their women had no rights and no voice in society. That's their weakness, Ruth explained to the group. They literally cannot imagine that female humans might be dangerous. They think we're all helpless. Patricia Bell used this information to make contact with resistance groups on a dozen different worlds. The Empire had conquered many planets over the centuries. Most of the rebels were men who had tried direct military attacks and failed. They're interested in working with us, Patricia reported. But they don't understand our methods. They keep asking when we're going to start shooting. Let them wonder, Amanda said. The Empire is making the same mistake. They think war has to be loud and obvious. Maya's network grew larger every week. Soon they had secure communications with mining stations, trading posts, and research facilities throughout known space. Information flowed back to Earth about Empire ship movements and military bases. Elena's shipping company expanded rapidly. She bought cargo vessels from other companies and hired crews of female pilots and engineers. On paper, she was just a successful businesswoman taking advantage of growing trade routes. Kate's training centers produced graduates who scattered to jobs throughout the solar system. They worked as technicians on space stations, crew members on cargo ships, and researchers at distant laboratories. All of them stayed in contact with the Underground Railroad. Dr. Amanda Stevens received an official briefing from Earth Defense Command 6 weeks after the network began operations. General Harrison explained their military plans for dealing with the Empire threat. We're building a fleet of warships, he said. It will take 3 years to complete construction and another year to train crews. Then we can launch a proper military response. Amanda nodded politely. That sounds like a good long-term plan, General. What she didn't tell him was that the Underground Railroad would be ready to move in 6 months. They had already identified the location of 3 Empire prison facilities. They had contacts with rebel groups on 8 different worlds. They had weapons and ships and trained personnel ready to deploy. Most importantly, they had something the Empire had never faced before. They had angry human women who refused to forgive or forget. Patricia Bell received a coded message that made her smile for the first time since the crisis began. It came from a source deep in Empire territory. 3 simple words that changed everything. Morgan's still alive. Captain Lisa Morgan and her surviving crew members were being held at a prison facility near the Centauri system. The Empire was keeping them alive for interrogation and as examples to other species who might resist the divine mandate. They had no idea that help was coming. They had no idea that Earthwomen had spent 6 months building a network specifically designed to bring them home. The Empire was about to learn something important about human nature. When you hurt someone's family, you make enemies for life. When those enemies happen to be women who know how to plan and organize and fight, you make a very dangerous mistake. Amanda Stevens looked at the star charts on her wall and marked the Location of the prison facility with a red pin. Soon that pin would mark the beginning of the Empire's downfall. The first strike came at dawn on Zilithia Prime. The Empire's main communication relay suddenly went silent. No explosions, no warnings, no trace of attack. One moment the massive station was broadcasting orders to 1,000 worlds. The next moment it was dead space. Commander HFY, now promoted to Admiral after his capture of the human ship, stood in his command center staring at blank screens. His communications officer, a nervous young male named Zektar, kept pressing buttons. That did nothing. How does an entire relay station just stop working? HFY demanded. Unknown, Admiral. All systems show normal operation, but no signals are getting through. HFY had been questioning the human females for 6 months. They told him nothing useful. They just stared at him with those strange eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. He had broken stronger prisoners before, but these Earth women were different. What he didn't know was that Maya Patel had spent 3 months studying captured Empire technology. She had found a simple weakness in their communication systems. A single virus uploaded at the right moment could shut down entire networks without triggering any alarms. The virus had been delivered by Captain Grace Martinez, commander of a converted cargo ship called the Silent Storm. Grace and her crew of 12 women had posed as traders from a neutral world. They had docked at the relay station, uploaded their electronic cargo manifest, and departed before anyone realized what had happened. Grace was now 3 star systems away, preparing for her next target. She had been a commercial pilot before, joining Kate Sullivan's recruitment drive. Flying cargo ships through dangerous space was something she knew well. Flying them as weapons was something new and exciting. Target acquired, announced her navigator, Lieutenant Diane Foster. Diane had been an Air Force pilot before the recruitment. She understood military tactics better than most of the converted civilians in their fleet. On the screen ahead of them was an Empire supply depot. It provided fuel and equipment to patrol ships covering a dozen systems. Taking it out would force Empire forces to return to base or risk running out of supplies. Remember, ladies, Grace said over the ship's intercom. We're merchants delivering mining equipment. Keep your weapons hidden until we're inside their shields. The Empire guards at the depot were bored and careless. They had been stationed at this remote outpost for 2 years without seeing any real action. When the Silent Storm requested docking permission, they barely checked the ship's papers. Grace walked into the depot's main office carrying a data pad and wearing a friendly smile. Behind her came 3 crew members pushing cargo containers on small wheels. "Morning, gentlemen," Grace said to the Empire guards. "We have a delivery for your mining operations." The guard captain, a large Zilithian with gray skin and tired eyes, waved them toward the storage area. "Bay 7. Make it quick." Grace nodded and led her team deeper into the facility. The cargo containers were filled with explosive devices, designed by combat engineer Kelly Brooks. Kelly had spent 15 years in the Army Corps of Engineers before retirement. She knew exactly how much force was needed to collapse critical support structures. While Grace kept the guards distracted with paperwork, her crew placed charges throughout the depot's fuel storage area and main power generator. The timers were set for 30 minutes. More than enough time to get back to their ship and reach safe distance. 28 minutes later, the Silent Storm was accelerating away from the depot at maximum speed. Grace counted down the final seconds on her watch. The explosion lit up the entire system. The depot's fuel reserves created a fireball that could be seen from 3 planets. Empire patrol ships throughout the region suddenly found themselves stranded without supplies or communication support. Admiral HFY received the news while interrogating Dr. Carmen Lopez, the human medical officer. Carmen had been answering his questions with single words or silence for 6 months. Today she was smiling. "Something amuses you, human?" HFY asked. "Just thinking about home," Carmen replied. HFY struck her across the face. Carmen's smile never wavered. "Your homeworld will burn when we are finished with these terrorists," he snarled. "What terrorists?" Carmen asked innocently. The reports kept coming. Supply depots destroyed, communication relays disabled, patrol ships found drifting empty in space with their crews mysteriously unconscious. The attacks followed no pattern that Empire strategists could understand. Intelligence analyst Robin Clark was the one planning the seemingly random strikes. Robin had worked for the CIA for 12 years before joining Amanda Stevens's network. She understood that the best way to hurt an enemy was to make them afraid and confused. Robin studied Empire fleet movements from her base on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Maya Patel's communication network brought her information from across the galaxy. Every Empire ship movement, every supply run, every patrol schedule found its way to Robin's computers. She identified the patterns that Empire commanders thought were secret. Their ships always used the same hyperspace routes. Their supplies came from predictable sources. Their patrol schedules followed rigid military doctrine. They're too organized, Robin explained to her team of analysts. They follow rules even when the rules don't make sense. We can use that against them. Robin's next target was a major supply convoy carrying weapons and equipment to Empire forces near the front lines. Intelligence reports showed the convoy would travel through the Kepler system using a route they had used dozens of times before. Pilot Nina Rodriguez was waiting for them. Nina had been a test pilot for experimental spacecraft before the war. She knew how to fly ships that most people couldn't even understand. Today she was flying something very special. Kelly Brooks had designed a ship that looked like an asteroid. It drifted through space using minimal power, appearing on sensors as nothing more than space debris. Inside was a crew of 6 women and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Empire convoy consisted of 12 large cargo ships and 6 escort fighters. They moved through space in perfect formation, following procedures that had worked for centuries. Nina waited until the convoy was committed to its course, too deep in the asteroid field to change direction quickly. Then she activated her ship's real engines and weapons systems. The fake asteroid suddenly became a very real threat. Nina's ship accelerated toward the convoy at impossible speed. Her weapons officer, Specialist Carol Thompson, had been studying Empire shield frequencies for months. She knew exactly where to aim. The lead escort fighter exploded before its pilot could even send a warning. The second and third fighters followed within seconds. The cargo ships tried to scatter, but they were too big and slow. Nina's ship darted between the cargo vessels like a hunting shark. Carol's weapons found weak points in their shields and hulls. Within minutes, the entire convoy was either destroyed or drifting helplessly. "All cargo secured," reported the boarding team leader. "Looks like weapons and armor. The rebels on Centauri 7 will be very happy." Nina smiled as she set course for the rendezvous point. Another successful mission for the Underground Railroad. Another blow against the empire that thought human women were weak and helpless. Admiral Vexahai stared at the reports covering his desk. In 3 months, his forces had lost 17 supply depots, 31 communication relays, and over 200 ships. The attacks were getting bolder and more frequent. "Who are these terrorists?" he demanded from his intelligence staff. "Unknown, Admiral. Our analysis suggests multiple groups working independently, possibly mercenaries hired by rival empires." Vexhide didn't believe it. The attacks were too coordinated, too precise. Someone was directing this campaign with military expertise and detailed knowledge of empire operations. He walked to the prison section and stopped outside Captain Lisa Morgan's cell. The human woman was sitting calmly on her bed reading a book his guards had given her. She looked up when he approached. "Enjoying your stay, Admiral?" she asked politely. "Your people are causing us some trouble," Vexhai said. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "My people are on Earth, Admiral, probably wondering what happened to us. These attacks across our territory, they have human involvement." Lisa set down her book and stood up. "I wouldn't know anything about that. I've been your guest for quite some time." Vexhai studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. Lisa met his gaze without flinching. After a moment, he turned and walked away. What he didn't see was the small smile that crossed Lisa's face after he left. She had been counting the attacks based on the changing mood of her guards. Each successful strike made them more nervous and angry. Someone was coming for them. Someone who knew how to fight and win. Lisa was betting it was Earth women who had decided that the Empire had made a very big mistake. Admiral Vexhai stood before the greatest fleet in Empire history. 200 ships filled the space around Zalithia Prime, their golden hulls gleaming in the light of the system's twin suns. Every vessel was armed with the most powerful weapons the Empire could build. Every crew was trained to perfection. "Today we end this rebellion," Vexhai announced to his fleet commanders. "These Earth terrorists think they can hide behind hit-and-run tactics. We will show them the true power of the divine mandate." His intelligence officers had finally tracked the source of the attacks. The humans had established a base in the Proxima Centauri system. Captured communications suggested it was there, main headquarters protected by a small fleet of converted merchant ships. Vexhai smiled as he thought about crushing these primitive rebels. The humans would learn what happened to species that dared challenge Empire authority. Their homeworld would burn as an example to others. What the Admiral didn't know was that every piece of intelligence had been carefully planted by strategic planner Victoria Blake. Victoria had spent 20 years in military intelligence before joining the Underground Railroad. She knew how to make enemies see exactly what she wanted them to see. The base at Proxima Centauri was real, but it was not what Vexhai expected. Fleet Commander Sandra Stone waited there with 30 ships that looked like converted cargo vessels. The ships appeared lightly armed and poorly organized, exactly as Victoria's false intelligence had suggested. "All ships report ready," Sandra announced to her captains. "Remember, ladies, we need to sell this performance, make it look like we're really trying to fight them off." Sandra had commanded destroyers in the Earth Navy before retirement. She, understood fleet tactics better than most Empire officers. More importantly, she understood how to lose a battle while winning a war. The Empire fleet arrived exactly when Victoria's intelligence reports had predicted. Vexhai positioned his ships in the standard attack formation, his massive dreadnoughts in the center with smaller vessels forming protective screens. "Surrender immediately," came the Admiral's broadcast. "Your rebellion ends now," Sandra responded, from the bridge of her flagship. "This is Commander Stone of the Free Human Alliance. We will never surrender to murderers and tyrants." The battle began with the Empire fleet advancing in perfect formation. Sandra's ships scattered and began what looked like desperate hit-and-run attacks. Several of her vessels took hits and appeared to be badly damaged. "Sir, the humans are breaking," reported Vexhai's tactical officer. "Their ships are retreating toward the inner system." "Pursue them," Vexhai ordered. "Show no mercy." The chase led deeper into the Proxima system, past the outer planets, and into the asteroid field surrounding the inner worlds. Sandra's ships seemed to be making their last stand near a large space station that appeared to be their main base. Vexhai ordered his entire fleet to surround the station. 200 ships formed a perfect sphere around what looked like humanity's last stronghold. The Admiral savored the moment of final victory. "Fire at will," he commanded. The Empire fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missile volleys converged on the space station from every direction. The structure exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire system. "Target destroyed," reported the weapons officer. No survivors detected. Vexhai was about to order the destruction of the remaining human ships when his sensors began screaming warnings. New contacts were appearing throughout the system. Lots of them. "Sir, we have multiple ships decloaking," the tactical officer said, his voice rising in panic. "They're everywhere." Captain Lisa Morgan sat in what had been the cargo bay of her captured ship, now converted into a makeshift courtroom. She wore the uniform Sandra Stone had brought her when the rescue team freed the prisoners 3 hours ago. Around her sat the other surviving members of her crew, all of them witnesses to what was about to happen. The real battle had lasted 18 hours. While Vexhai was destroying empty ships and an abandoned station, the true human fleet had been moving into position throughout the Proxima system. Cloaked ships designed by combat engineer Kelly Brooks surrounded the Empire forces using stealth technology that made them invisible to enemy sensors. The trap had been perfectly planned by Victoria Blake and executed by dozens of ship captains, who had spent months preparing for this moment. When Kelly's ships dropped their cloaking, the Empire fleet found itself surrounded by over 300 vessels. These were not converted cargo ships. These were purpose-built warships crewed by women who had trained for this battle. Nina Rodriguez led a squadron of fighters that moved like hunting wolves. Grace Martinez commanded heavy cruisers that hammered Empire dreadnoughts with weapons designed specifically to penetrate their shields. The Empire fleet tried to fight back, but they were trapped in the asteroid field with no room to maneuver. Their perfect formations became death traps as human ships attacked from every angle. Admiral Vex-High watched his flagship's bridge fill with smoke and sparks. Half his fleet was already destroyed or drifting powerless. The humans were not the primitive species he had expected. They fought with skill and determination that matched his best officers. "Sir, we're losing main power," reported his engineering officer. "Weapons are offline." "All ships retreat to hyperspace," Vex-High ordered. "Unable to comply, sir. They're jamming our jump drives." The admiral realized he was going to die in this system, killed by the same species he had dismissed as weak and inferior. The irony was bitter, but appropriate. The final Empire ship surrendered after its weapons were destroyed, and its crew was trapped in a powerless hull. The battle was over. The mighty Zilithian fleet had been crushed by an enemy they had underestimated. Lisa walked through the corridors of Vex-High's captured flagship, escorted by Marine guards who had been part of the rescue fleet. The ship that had been her prison was now her courtroom. The Empire officers sat in chains in the same cargo bay, where they had murdered her crew 6 months ago. Vex-High sat at the center, his proud uniform torn and dirty, his black eyes no longer arrogant. Judge Advocate General Margaret Davis had arrived with the main fleet to conduct the trial. Margaret had prosecuted war criminals for 15 years before joining the Underground Railroad. She knew exactly how to handle cases like this. "Admiral Vex-High," Margaret announced formally. "You are charged with murder, torture, and violations of interstellar law. How do you plead?" Vex-High looked around the room at the human women who now controlled his fate. He saw no mercy in their eyes, but he also saw no hatred. They were going to judge him according to their laws, not execute him for revenge. "I do not recognize your authority," he said finally. "The authority comes from the victims you created," Lisa said quietly. 12 good men died in this room because you decided their lives meant nothing. Today we decide what your life is worth." Margaret opened her datapad and began reading the charges. Each crime was documented with evidence and witness testimony. The trial would be fair and thorough, exactly as human law required. Vex-High had expected to be killed immediately after capture. Instead, he was facing something he had never experienced before. Justice. Real justice, administered by people who believed that even enemies deserved fair treatment. The Admiral began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake 6 months ago. He had not just attacked a single ship. He had challenged an entire civilization's sense of right and wrong. He had turned Earth's women into his enemies, and they had responded not with random violence, but with organized, methodical justice. The trial lasted 3 days. When it was over, Vex-High and his surviving officers were sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of rehabilitation. They would live, but they would spend their remaining years learning about the concepts of equality and human rights. Lisa stood on the bridge of her new ship, watching as the captured Empire vessels were prepared for the journey back to Earth. The Underground Railroad had become something larger. It was now the foundation for a new kind of alliance between species who believed in justice and freedom. The war was not over, but the most important battle had been won. The Zilithian Empire had learned that human women were not weak or helpless. They were something far more dangerous. They were organized, determined, and absolutely unwilling to forgive those who hurt innocent people. Admiral Vex-High sat in his cell, staring at books about human history and law. He was beginning to understand what he had awakened when he murdered those 12 men. He had created enemies who would never stop fighting for justice. He had made the biggest mistake in Empire history. Outside his cell, the universe was changing. Other species were hearing about the human victory and deciding they no longer had to submit to Empire tyranny. The rebellion was spreading to a dozen worlds, and at the center of it all were Earth women who had decided that some things could never be forgiven or forgotten. The news of Admiral Vex-High's defeat spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, 12 different alien species declared independence from the Zilithian Empire. Worlds that had suffered under Empire rule for centuries, suddenly, found the courage to fight back. Captain Lisa Morgan stood in the conference room of Earth's newest space station, looking at representatives from dozens of different planets. Some were humanoid, others were completely alien, but they all shared the same expression: hope. "The Empire is collapsing," reported Intelligence Officer Patricia Bell. "Their remaining fleets are pulling back to defend their core worlds. Most of their colonies are in open rebellion." Dr. Amanda Stevens smiled as she read the latest reports from across known space. The Underground Railroad had become something much larger than a rescue mission. It was now the foundation for a new kind of galactic government. "We need to organize this properly," Amanda said. "These worlds need help rebuilding their defenses and governments. They need to know they're not alone anymore." The Galactic Defense Coalition was formed 3 months later. 57 worlds signed the founding charter, with Earth as the coordinating headquarters. Captain Lisa Morgan accepted the position of Supreme Commander, though she insisted the title was temporary. "I'm a ship captain, not a politician," Lisa told the assembled delegates. "Once we have proper elections, I'll go back to exploring space." The Coalition's first official act was establishing the Universal Rights Charter. Legal scholar Donna Pierce had spent weeks writing the document, studying the laws and customs of every member species. "Every sentient being has the right to life, freedom, and dignity," Donna announced as she presented the charter. "No government may enslave, torture, or murder its people. No species may claim superiority over another." The charter passed by unanimous vote. For the first time in galactic history, there was a written law that applied to all intelligent life, regardless of species or planet of origin. The Coalition's second priority was dealing with former Empire prisoners and refugees. Director Claire Watson established rehabilitation centers on 20 different worlds. Her job was helping both the victims and the perpetrators of Empire crimes. "Healing takes time," Claire explained to her staff. "Some of these people have been slaves for generations. Others have been taught that slavery is natural and right. We need to help both groups learn how to live in freedom." The rehabilitation centers became models for the rest of the galaxy. Former Empire officers learned about concepts like equality and justice. Former slaves learned skills that helped them become productive citizens. The programs were so successful that other species began copying them. Admiral Vexahai spent his first year in prison reading everything he could find about human history and law. The books confused and troubled him. He had been taught that strength meant the ability to dominate others. Humans seemed to believe that true strength came from protecting the weak. Dr. Laura Jackson, the correctional psychologist assigned to his case, visited him every week. Laura had worked with violent criminals for 20 years. She understood that even the worst people could change if they truly wanted to. "Tell me about your childhood," Laura said during one of their sessions. "I was trained to be a warrior from birth," Vexhai replied. "Strength was everything. Weakness was death." "What do you think of that training now?" Vexhai was quiet for a long time. "I think it made me into a monster." The admission was small, but it was the first sign that the former admiral might be capable of change. Laura made a note in his file and scheduled another session for the following week. The transformation of the galaxy was not without problems. Some Empire loyalists refused to surrender and began operating as pirates and terrorists. Coalition forces, led by women like Grace Martinez and Nina Rodriguez, spent months hunting down these holdouts. The biggest challenge came from species that had never known democracy or equality, planets where females had no rights, where slavery was normal, where might made right. These worlds needed more than new laws. They needed complete cultural change. Maya Patel's communication network became a tool for education and reform. She broadcast programs that taught basic concepts of human rights and democratic government. The shows were translated into hundreds of different languages and broadcast to every world in Coalition space. "We can't force people to change their minds," Maya explained to her programming staff. "But we can give them the information they need to make better choices." The programs were surprisingly popular. Young aliens across the galaxy began questioning their traditional ways of thinking. They formed study groups and discussion clubs. They wrote letters to coalition headquarters asking for help in reforming their governments. Dr. Ruth Goldman established the Galactic University on a neutral world near the center of coalition space. Students from every member species came to study history, law, science, and philosophy. The university's motto was simple: knowledge brings freedom. The first graduation ceremony included students from 37 different worlds. Ruth watched with pride as young aliens who had been enemies just 2 years earlier walked across the stage together as friends and colleagues. Elena Vasquez's shipping company became the backbone of coalition trade and commerce. Her cargo ships carried not just goods but also teachers, doctors, and engineers who helped rebuild war-torn worlds. The company's profits funded schools and hospitals across the galaxy. Kate Sullivan opened military academies on 12 different worlds. She trained the next generation of coalition defense forces, teaching them that true soldiers protected civilians rather than conquered them. Her students were both male and female from dozens of different species. The coalition faced its first major test 3 years after its formation. A group of Empire loyalists seized control of an entire star system and declared war on the new government. They held millions of civilians hostage and demanded the return of their former territories. Supreme Commander Lisa Morgan assembled a coalition fleet to deal with the crisis. For the first time, ships from 50 different worlds fought together, under a single command. The fleet included humans but also aliens who had learned coalition principles and made them their own. The battle was swift and decisive. The Loyalist forces were crushed by coordinated attacks from species that had once been enemies. The coalition had proven that unity was stronger than tyranny. 5 years after the defeat of Admiral Vexhai, the galaxy had become a very different place. The Zilithian Empire was gone, replaced by dozens of democratic governments that worked together for mutual benefit. Trade and education flourished. Wars between species became rare. Admiral Vexhai was released from prison after serving 6 years of his sentence. His rehabilitation had been complete and genuine. He spent his remaining years working with Dr. Jackson to help other former Empire officers understand the difference between strength and brutality. Captain Lisa Morgan finally got her wish to return to space exploration. She commanded the UES Discovery, a ship crewed by volunteers from 20 different species. Their mission was to explore unknown regions of space and make peaceful contact with new civilizations. The ship's motto, painted on the hull in 50 different languages, reflected everything the coalition stood for. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge. Dr. Amanda Stevens became the first elected president of the Galactic Defense Coalition. In her inauguration speech, she spoke about the journey from the Underground Railroad to galactic government. We started as 12 women around a conference table, she said. We were angry and determined to rescue our friends. We never imagined we would end up rebuilding the entire galaxy. The audience included representatives from over 200 worlds. Many of them were women who had been inspired by the example of Earth females. They had learned that being underestimated could be an advantage, and that determination was more powerful than any weapon. The rebuilt UES Horizon became a monument to the victims of Empire oppression. Captain Morgan's words were still etched on its hull. We are not your property. We are not your subjects. We are human beings, and we will not be forgotten. Below those words, the coalition had added a new inscription in the common galactic language. Here lies the proof that even the smallest act of courage can change the universe. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When you attack innocent people, you create enemies. When those enemies happen to be organized, determined, and absolutely unwilling to forgive injustice, you face a force that can reshape entire civilizations. Earthwomen had kept their promise. They had not forgiven the Empire's crimes. Instead, they had made sure those crimes could never happen again. They had built a galaxy where strength meant protecting others, where different species could live as equals, and where the rule of law was stronger than the rule of force. The Underground Railroad had become something eternal. It was the idea that someone, somewhere, would always be willing to stand up for those who could not protect themselves. It was the promise that no tyrant, no matter how powerful, could ever completely crush the hope for freedom and justice.